the point here is we're not sure if these were uncommon words.
Yes. So JC, a part of your question was why use uncommon words, which if we're looking through, I think if you're just looking through where is this represented in the texts, sometimes it can come to the position where scholars will talk about words as uncommon. The context of that being tagged uncommon, though, usually means within the context of the literature that we have.
Right.
Does that mean it's uncommon for all of the context of the literature that we don't have? And your question of was this spoken or not?
Right.
And so uncommon, potentially uncommon in the texts we have preserved.
Right.
Does that mean uncommon wholesale?
Elsewhere. And this is why it's important to check like the Brown Driver Brig, the
BDB and halot.
Halot and these. If you look up at the beginning of these definitions, it'll often give you, it'll tell you this is a hapax, right? And what a hapax legomena is it's a word that only appears in the biblical canon once. And so the example I always give is if you have a word like plore, let's make up a word plore, and it only appears one time, and I ate a plore, and that's the only time, you have no context, you have no idea, you have no way to compare it to something else. But if it appears more than once, and I ate a plore, and then you have another place where it says, and I ate an apple, an orange, a plore, a grape, and you go, oh, okay, this plore is probably a fruit.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have better context the more at times a word appears in the text. So because some of these words appear more than once and they appear to be in lists of birds, and the question is these are probably birds. It's also poetry. Now the thing we need to remember about poetry is that poets try typically to use words that are less frequent. They're trying to be clever. They're trying to be creative. Sometimes we in English try to rhyme. Hebrew poets try to use alliteration, right? So they're trying to use certain letters, combinations of consonants that are alliterative. So it's not necessarily that they're uncommon words, but they're trying to use certain words that will be alliterative in their poems. There's also this knack in Hebrew poetry to try to find the most exotic animals. So if you go back and look at Job, and he takes Job on this tour of the universe, and he's basically God standing up and saying, stop complaining. Where were you? Where were you when I created this stuff? And he's not going to say like, tell me about the dog. What do you know about the dog? What do you know about the cat? He doesn't do that. He's going to take him on the strangest tell me about the ostrich. Why is the ostrich the way it is, right? Tell me about the hippo. Tell me about the alligator, right? You have Leviathan and Behemoth and all these things. So you're going to get this penchant for strange animals, odd animals, and it's not necessarily that they were infrequently used words, but because it's in poetry, like poets today, they might be reaching for words that are, you're reaching for the thesaurus. Okay, what word could I use instead of very? Because you're writing poetry.
It's poetry. Yeah. You're trying to flex your skills as a writer.
Right.
And reaching for those more exotic words or descriptions. A lot of it is visual. You're trying to cast the mind's eye around to other things. So how common, I think, then it opens that question of how common would these words have been? If we're talking about poetry in the same way that if you read poetry now, some poetry is written in the way that this wants to imitate regular speech, that this sounds like anything you'd hear walking down the street.
Right.
Other poets try to reach for more elevated speech or use the style of that to message to you,
That's right.
I'm doing something different. So Jeremiah may be bringing forward words that are common, but then become unknown later on. And so maybe why a different word gets used is because a scribe comes to that and says, I might know what this is, or like the Septuagint, maybe I'm not totally sure what this is.
Right.
And we can transliterate, or we can say, I think I know where we're going. In order to preserve your meaning, I'm going to present another bird that the audience does know. What's important here is it preserving everything that was written in a way that nobody can understand, or allowing the audience into the message as best as we can.
Correct. And because the context is these birds preserve the time of their coming, meaning they're probably migratory birds. These are birds that will come to one place for a part of the season and then they'll leave. And they know to do this instinctively. So that they're probably, even if we're not sure exactly what they are, some of them we know from other contexts, right? So even though they might be a hapax in the biblical canon, we might know them from an Aramaic cognate. We might know them from an Aramaic inscription or from an Akkadian inscription or something. So there might be something very similar in one of these other languages. And we go, okay, it only appears in the Bible once or twice, but we know it from another language. But these are migratory birds, so this is probably the best solution for this.